The bridge of the HSV Valiant was eerily quiet, save for the steady hum of the ship's systems and the occasional beeping of control panels. Captain Amy Kellen stood at the center, arms crossed, her sharp blue eyes locked on the holographic display before her. A dozen red blips, Zaloth warships, surrounded the meager formation of human vessels, each enemy ship dwarfing their own. The Zaloth Dominion, an empire known for its brutal conquests, had made first contact with humanity years ago. Since then, their stance had been clear: humans were insignificant, barely worth acknowledging. Today, that belief was about to be tested. A crackling voice burst through the comms. "Human fleet, this is Admiral Vruk KTH of the Zaloth Dominion." The tone was dripping with amusement. "We were surprised to see your presence here. It is laughable. What do you hope to accomplish with such a pitiful force?" The bridge crew exchanged glances. The insult was expected. It didn't make it any less infuriating. Amy took a slow breath, then leaned forward. "Admiral Vruk KTH," she said smoothly, "this pitiful force is standing its ground. You entered a neutral zone without clearance. That makes you the trespassers." The alien admiral chuckled. "Your bravado is almost entertaining. Almost. I could wipe you from existence with a single volley." "Then do it," Amy shot back. Silence. Amy smirked. The Zaloth weren't used to being challenged, and they certainly weren't expecting it from a fleet they considered beneath notice. She let the silence linger before continuing. "Your people think size wins battles," she said. "I disagree. But since you seem convinced, why don't you take your shot?" Another pause. "Then, we will give you one opportunity to surrender. Power down your weapons, and we will allow you to live." Amy's jaw tightened. "Not interested." The comm channel cut off abruptly. "Captain," Lieutenant Harris, the weapons officer, said, "they're charging weapons." Amy turned toward the display. Red targeting indicators blinked over the human fleet. Outnumbered. Outgunned. But not outplayed. "They think this will be easy," she murmured. "Let's prove them wrong." The Zaloth warships moved with the grace of predators, their massive forms blocking out the distant stars. Their primary vessel, the Vernick, was the size of a small city, its sleek, obsidian hull gliding forward with ominous certainty. Energy signatures spiked. "Enemy fleet preparing to fire!" shouted Ensign Patel from the sensor station. Amy's pulse quickened, but her voice remained steady. "All ships, execute pattern Kappa 4. Now." Across the human fleet, engines roared to life. The ships, smaller, more maneuverable, split into staggered formations, darting into positions that made them harder to target. The Valiant twisted sharply, avoiding a direct line of fire. A heartbeat later, the first salvo erupted from the Zaloth cannons. Beams of searing plasma streaked through the void, aimed to obliterate. But they met only empty space. "They missed?" Patel blinked in disbelief. "No," Amy said, watching the holographic map. "We made them miss." The Zaloth warships, built for sheer destructive force, had never fought enemies who didn't stand still and take the hit. Their weapons were devastating, but slow. Too slow. "Return fire," Amy ordered. The Valiant and its sister ships unleashed their own response. Streams of kinetic rounds and high-velocity torpedoes shot across the battlefield. They weren't trying to destroy the Zaloth outright. That would be impossible with their firepower. Instead, they aimed for weak points: sensor arrays, maneuvering thrusters, exposed heat vents. Small victories. Calculated strikes. The Vernick's shield shimmered under the bombardment, but then a direct hit. One of the torpedoes struck the exposed side of a Dominion destroyer. The explosion rippled outward, sending fragments spiraling into the void. The ship wavered, systems flickering. On the Zaloth command bridge, Admiral Vruk KTH snarled. "Annoying pests," he growled. "I want their fleet reduced to debris, now!" The Zaloth ships adjusted tactics, tightening their formation, pushing forward with relentless aggression. "Captain," Harris said, voice tight, "they're adapting." Their next shots won't miss. Amy clenched her jaw. Time to change the game. Lieutenant deployed decoy drones, full spread. Tiny, metallic spheres launched from the Valiant's hull, dispersing rapidly in all directions. Within moments, they mimicked human energy signatures, flooding the enemy's targeting systems with false readings. The Zaloth fired. Their plasma beams lanced through space, but instead of hitting human ships, they obliterated the decoys. Amy allowed herself a small, sharp grin. They're blind, Patel whispered. Not for long, Amy said. So let's make it count. She turned to Harris. Load the Trident strike. Target their flagship's main thrusters. The Trident was a human innovation, a triple-stage torpedo that split into 3 independent warheads upon approach, making it nearly impossible to intercept. It was humanity's ace in the hole, and now, it was about to make history. Trident locked, Harris confirmed. Amy exhaled. Fire! The torpedo launched, spiraling through space before splitting into 3. The Zaloth flagship had no time to react. The first warhead hit their shields, sending a wave of distortion across their hull. The second impacted the primary engine cluster, causing a cascading failure. The third detonated deep inside the thruster core. The Vernek lurched violently, flames and debris spewing into space. The bridge lights flickered as Admiral Vruk staggered to his feet. Impossible! He hissed. Back on the Valiant, cheers erupted across the bridge. Amy didn't smile. Not yet. She keyed the comms. Admiral Vruk, she said, her voice smooth, unwavering. Still think we're insignificant? A long pause. Then, this isn't over. The Zaloth fleet, once so certain of their victory, now hesitated. Their flagship crippled, their formations broken, their arrogance shattered. Amy allowed herself the smallest of smirks. No, she murmured, watching the enemy's ships waver. But it's a start. The silence after the first engagement didn't last. The crippled Vernek drifted, venting atmosphere and fire into the void, but the rest of the Zaloth fleet quickly recovered. Their hesitation turned to fury. Red targeting locks swarmed across the holographic display. They're regrouping, Patel warned, eyes wide. Amy nodded. She expected nothing less. They'll want to make an example of us. And they would try. The Dominion fleet tightened formation. Their heavy cruisers took the lead, smaller frigates tucking behind them like shields. No more arrogance. Only cold, calculated violence. Harris, she said, voice calm. Ready cluster mines. Target their formation gaps. A quiet acknowledgement. The crew moved like clockwork. They had no illusions. This wasn't over, and surviving would take more than clever shots. It would take every trick humanity had learned from being outnumbered and underestimated. The Dominion ships advanced, energy signatures climbing. Their next volley would be massive. Deploy mines, Amy ordered. From the Valiant's belly, a line of magnetic cluster mines drifted out, invisible in the darkness. The enemy's ships didn't slow. The first wave of plasma fire streaked in. Evasive! The fleet scattered again, but not fast enough. The CNS Archer took a direct hit, shields collapsing under the force. The ship spun out of formation, hull breaching. Archers lost propulsion, Patel reported grimly. Divert 2 support ships to tow her out. Amy responded, her heart tight. She couldn't afford to lose them yet. A ripple of explosions flashed across the battlefield. The cluster mines detonated, ripping through the edges of the Dominion formation. The heavy cruisers withstood the blasts, but several smaller frigates broke apart under the impact. Harris didn't look up from his console. 2 confirmed kills. Not enough. The enemy still outnumbered them 5-1. The Dominion ships pressed forward. Tactically superior. Relentless. On the Vernek's damaged bridge, Vruk braced against the console. Enough with playing, he snarled. Surround them. Drive them into the debris field. His fleet obeyed. Patel's voice sharpened. They're forcing us toward the asteroid belt. Amy stared at the tactical display. The Dominion wanted to box them in and crush them against unyielding rock. A slow death trap. Perfect, she whispered. Captain? Harris asked, blinking. Plot a course straight into the field. Dense section. The bridge went still. Ma'am, Patel hesitated. Our ships aren't built for tight asteroid navigation at speed. Neither are theirs. Understanding lit Harris's face. We're smaller. More agile. Exactly. She keyed into the fleet channel. All ships, into the belt. Stick close to my vector. Tight formations. Do not break, no matter what. One by one, the human ships veered toward the looming asteroid field, a jagged graveyard of shattered rock and ice, tumbling at dangerous velocities. The Valiant led the charge, weaving between spinning monoliths. The crew felt every maneuver in their bones, inertial dampeners pushed to their limits. Behind them, the Dominion fleet hesitated. Their massive cruisers struggled to adjust course. They're following, Patel said, breathless. Good. The chase turned brutal. Massive boulders twisted unpredictably, slamming into careless ships. A Zaloth destroyer clipped an asteroid and spiraled out of control, breaking apart in a shower of metal. Human ships slipped between gaps too tight for their pursuers. Smaller. Faster. That was the key. But it wasn't without cost. A violent tremor rattled the Valiant as a shard of rock scraped along the starboard hull. Warning lights flashed red. Starboard armor breach, Patel reported. Seal compartments. Divert power to shields. The Dominion ships behind them weren't so lucky. Another enemy frigate slammed into rotating debris and exploded. The human fleet darted through the chaos. But this wasn't just about evasion, it was a trap. Harris, Amy said. Now. On her command, hidden charges, previously deployed, detonated within the asteroid field. Shockwaves sent enormous rocks hurtling in unpredictable directions. Enemy ships attempting pursuit were smashed by tumbling boulders, reduced to twisted wrecks in moments. Patel exhaled. 3 more enemy ships down. But the Dominion kept coming. Admiral Vrukth's voice cut through the comm channel, broadcast openly. You run like prey. We will hunt you down, human. Amy responded instantly. You can't catch what you can't follow. She ended the transmission. A burst of static crackled in the air as the enemy's frustration grew. We're nearing the far edge of the belt, Patel announced. Amy narrowed her gaze. Beyond the asteroid field lay open space, but they'd be exposed again. Harris, she said quietly, prepare the fleet to scatter once clear. Give them multiple targets to chase. Orders relayed. The human ships surged out of the field in all directions. The Dominion, confused by the sudden split, fractured their pursuit. The Valiant broke hard left, racing toward a nearby nebula. 2 Dominion cruisers followed. Patel swore under his breath. They're gaining. Harris. Deploy the last of the decoys. Spheres launched, filling the void with dozens of false signals. The cruisers hesitated, then split apart, each chasing separate ghosts. Amy exhaled slowly. The ship shuddered as debris impacted the aft hull. Systems flickered but held. We can't outrun them forever, Harris muttered. We won't, Amy replied. On the Dominion flagship, Vrukth slammed a fist into his console. He'd been humiliated twice in one day. He would not tolerate a third. Converge, he barked. Cut off their escape vectors. I want them obliterated. Back on the Valiant, Amy studied the tactical display. The Dominion fleet was tightening again, trying to trap them in open space. They're closing the net, Patel said quietly. Amy smiled grimly. Let them. Harris blinked. Captain? Transmit our coordinates on an open channel. Make it look like an error. Patel's eyes widened. They'll think we're cornered. Amy's smile grew colder. Exactly. She keyed into the fleet-wide channel. All ships prepare for the next move. We've danced long enough. It's time they see what we've been hiding. In space, numbers could lie. Size could intimidate. But cunning? That was humanity's real weapon. Amy sat back in her command chair, gaze steady as the Dominion ships bore down on their position. Let's give them the fight they came for. Space fell quiet again. Too quiet. On the Valiant's bridge, Captain Amy Kellen watched the Dominion fleet's slow, steady approach. Every sensor reading showed the same, 31 enemy warships converging on their position. The human fleet was scattered, damaged, and to the enemy's eyes cornered. Perfect. Patel, she said softly. Status on the beacon signal? Transmitting, ma'am. Wideband clean. They think we're broadcasting in error. Amy's mouth twitched into a subtle smile. Good. On the Dominion flagship Vernick, Admiral Vruck KTH leaned forward, eyes gleaming. His prey had run out of room. The human captain's clumsy transmission was confirmation. They were lost, calling for help that would never arrive. Close in, Vruck KTH ordered. Weapons hot. The Zaloth fleet shifted, tightening like a fist around the tiny human vessel. But the humans had not sent a distress call. They'd sent an invitation. Patel's console beeped softly. Multiple signals incoming, he said, sitting straighter. Confirm, Amy ordered. He swallowed. Confirmed. 27 human warships, emerging from stealth. Approaching from their blind side. Amy nodded once. They'd been waiting for hours, cloaked within the nebula's charged particles, hidden by radiation the Zaloth sensors couldn't penetrate. While the Dominion hunted, humanity had prepared the trap. Patch me through to the fleet, she said. The channel opened, her voice steady and clear. To all units of Task Force Warden, execute Operation Iron Veil. A heartbeat passed. Then the void came alive. Behind the Dominion fleet, space shimmered as the hidden human ships decloaked in perfect formation. Frigates, destroyers, and cruisers armed with state-of-the-art targeting arrays and experimental weapons systems, designed for one purpose: take down bigger prey. Admiral Vruck KTH's eyes widened as proximity alarms flooded his command deck. Impossible, he breathed. Before he could give an order, the human task force struck. Precision bombardments rained down on the vulnerable rear sections of Dominion vessels. Engines exploded. Hulls buckled. 2 enemy cruisers went dark in seconds, caught completely off guard. On the Valiant, Amy's voice rang out, cold and direct. Harris, fire the lance. The ship's forward battery hummed, charging the particle lance, a weapon capable of piercing even Dominion shielding at close range. It fired in a brilliant arc of blue energy, stabbing straight into a pursuing destroyer. The enemy vessel split in half, consumed by its own ruptured core. Shears erupted across the human bridge. Keep focus, Amy cut in sharply. This is just the start. The Dominion fleet, stunned but not broken, tried to pivot. But they were caught in a crossfire, pinned between the Valiant's decoy transmission and the human task force behind them. Patel, Amy ordered. Overlap targeting solutions with Task Force Command. Prioritize cruisers and command ships. On it. The battle became chaos. Dominion warships twisted and fired wildly, but their shots went wide, confused by false signals and sensor interference from the nebula. Human ships, smaller and faster, darted around them like hunting wolves, tearing into vulnerable spots. The Zaloth flagship Vernick attempted to turn, engine straining, but found itself locked in place by precision EMP torpedoes from the flanking human vessels. Admiral Vruck KTH roared, slamming his claws into the command console. They outsmarted us. Every step. Pride had blinded him. The Valiant surged forward, moving in concert with the fleet, firing short, sharp bursts, never lingering in one place long enough to become a target. Report, Amy snapped. 4 Dominion ships disabled, Patel called out. Another 2 on fire. They're losing formation. She allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The trap had worked. But it wasn't over yet. On the Vernick, damage reports flooded in. Vruck KTH turned to his second. Rally the fleet. If we hold formation, we can still overpower them. But his officers hesitated. The fleet was in disarray, command ships disabled or destroyed. He had numbers, yes, but they no longer knew where to aim. And humans? Humans knew exactly what they were doing. On the Valiant, Harris spoke quickly. Captain, Task Force Admiral Juno requests confirmation for full strike authorization. Amy exhaled. It was time. Confirm. Message sent. A second later, the full force of Task Force Warden unleashed coordinated fire on the Dominion's command structure. Cruisers disappeared in flashes of light. The Dominion fleet's cohesion crumbled. Isolated ships tried to flee but found human destroyers already in pursuit. The battlefield shifted. The hunters had become prey. Harris shook his head in disbelief. We're doing it. No, Amy corrected quietly, eyes still locked on the display. We've done it. On the Vernick, Admiral Vukth's world collapsed. The impossible had happened. The fleet he once considered unstoppable was broken. Human warships, small, precise, and lethal, had picked apart his forces piece by piece. We retreat, he rasped finally. His officers stared at him in stunned silence. A Dominion admiral, ordering a retreat? But they had no choice. The Vernick's engines roared to life, limping away, dragging what remained of the fleet behind it. On the Valiant, Patel's console pinged. Captain, he said breathlessly. They're withdrawing. Amy nodded, a slow smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. Let them go. Harris frowned. We're not pursuing? No need, Amy replied. They'll spread the story themselves. She leaned back in her chair. The Zaloth Dominion had come to mock the human tiny fleet. Now they were running from it. And the galaxy would hear about it. She opened a fleet-wide channel, her voice carrying to every human vessel. Task Force Warden, she said calmly. Mission success. Return to rally coordinates for recovery and debrief. You were never the underdogs, only underestimated. The calm closed. A long silence settled on the bridge. Then Patel spoke quietly. We made history today, didn't we? Amy nodded. Yes, we did. Harris turned toward her, a crooked grin breaking through the exhaustion. And we're just getting started. Amy smiled back. The tiny fleet had just changed the balance of power in the galaxy. And they had done it the human way, with cunning, adaptability, and refusal to yield. She looked at the fading enemy signals on the display. Let them tell their story. The battle was over, but the weight of it lingered in the silence of the Valiant's bridge. Systems hummed, warning lights blinked quietly, reminders of the damage sustained, the cost paid. Captain Amy Kellen sat forward, hands clasped, eyes on the tactical display. The enemy fleet was gone. What remained were drifting hulks and silent wreckage, Zaloth ships that had once mocked humanity, now torn apart by what they thought was a tiny fleet. Patel broke the silence. Survivors in the field. Some Dominion escape pods. Amy's voice remained steady. Mark them. Broadcast coordinates to the Republic search teams. We show mercy where they didn't. He nodded and set to work. Harris leaned over his console, fatigue plain in his posture, but his voice still carried energy. Task Force Warden reporting minimal losses, Captain. A few injuries. No fatalities. She exhaled slowly. Better than we hoped. But the real battle was just beginning. Open a secure channel to Republic Command, she ordered. A holographic display flickered to life. Admiral Renzo, a silver-haired veteran with sharp eyes, appeared. Kellen, he greeted, his voice low but pleased. We monitored partial transmissions. I assume I'm speaking to the architect of an upset the Dominion won't soon forget. Amy allowed herself a tight smile. Mission accomplished, sir. Dominion forces engaged and broken. The fleet is regrouping and commencing recovery protocols. Renzo's expression hardened. The Senate will call this a miracle. I'll call it proof. He leaned closer. Proof that human tactics can surpass numbers and brute force. You didn't win by luck. You outthought them. Amy met his gaze. We won't always have numbers. We will always have ingenuity. The Admiral nodded. The galaxy's watching now. You've started something larger than a battle, Captain. You've started fear. And fear travels fast. The hologram vanished. Amy sat back, staring at the starfield beyond the viewport. It was quiet now. But the echoes of what they had done would ripple across every star system. In the Valiant's medbay, crew members sat in silence, patching each other up. The adrenaline had drained, replaced by exhaustion and quiet relief. Chief Engineer Tran hobbled over to Patel. Did we really do it? Patel, nursing a burn on his arm, chuckled softly. You doubted? She shook her head. I didn't dare hope. Hours later, the fleet gathered. Human ships formed neat formations around the shattered remains of Dominion vessels. Cleanup teams were already cataloging salvage, but that wasn't why Amy had called the formation. She opened a fleet-wide broadcast. This wasn't just a battle, she said. Her voice was calm, but it carried weight. This was a message. We stood against a force 5 times our size. We didn't beg for mercy. We didn't break. We adapted. We fought smart. And now they run from us. Silence. Then, quiet applause crackling over comms, growing into cheers. Amy waited for the noise to subside before speaking again. This victory doesn't belong to me. It belongs to every crew member who trusted in a plan that sounded impossible. To every pilot who made impossible turns in that asteroid field. To every gunner who fired with precision. And to every engineer who kept these ships alive when physics said they should have come apart. Her voice softened. We were underestimated. We were mocked. And now the galaxy knows exactly who we are. The comms went silent again. But this time, it was reverence. A private comm alert chimed. Patel turned to her. Captain, incoming transmission. Not from Republic channels. Source? He hesitated. Unknown origin. Encrypted, but not hostile. Amy narrowed her eyes. Put it through. The hologram shimmered, and a figure appeared. Katren, a Zaloth emissary. His dark eyes regarded her with something unexpected, respect. Captain Kellen, he said carefully. I do not speak for the Dominion fleet you bested. But I speak for others who watched. Amy leaned forward. You've been observing. Yes, he admitted. We believed humans to be reckless, loud creatures with fragile ships. He paused. We were mistaken. Amy said nothing. Katren continued. Not all of us agreed with the Dominion's arrogance. Today you exposed it. And more importantly, you revealed human cunning. His gaze sharpened. That will change many things. She met his stare evenly. We'll fight if we have to. But we'll talk if you're ready to listen. A long pause. Then a small bow of his head. I suspect we will speak again. The hologram vanished. Patel exhaled. First they mock us, then they call us worthy. Harris grinned. Classic. Amy smiled faintly. Let them talk. We'll keep doing. That night, in her private quarters, Amy sat alone. The battle was over, but in the silence, the weight pressed down harder than before. She activated a private recording device. Captain's log, final entry for Operation Iron Veil. She paused, gathering her thoughts. We turned the impossible into history. But I know this is just the beginning. Fear spreads fast. But so does hope. Her voice softened. For years, humans have been dismissed as small, noisy upstarts. Today, they saw what small can do. She closed the log, powered down the console, and sat back, staring out the viewport. The stars didn't look different. But everything had changed. On the edge of the known systems, distant Dominion ships limped home. Broken, humiliated, and terrified. In their silence, whispers began. Whispers that would travel far beyond any official report. They mocked the tiny fleet. Until they saw it was human ships. And next time, they would think twice.